wake up to the harsh sound of metal scraping against stone. It's not your alarm or phone, but something heavier, colder, and far more real. Your eyes slowly adjust to the dim light of flickering torches, casting long shadows across damp, cracked walls. The air feels thick, carrying a smell you instantly regret noticing: iron, sweat, and something unpleasant you can't quite name. You sit up, confused, your head slightly spinning, trying to understand where you are. Then you look down and realize the clothes on your body aren't yours. Rough fabric, worn and stained, hanging loosely like they've been used for years. Your heart starts to race as you scan the room, and that's when you see them. A wooden table stands nearby, neatly arranged with tools that don't belong in any normal place. Hooks, ropes, and cold metal instruments sit in perfect order. In that moment, the truth hits you hard. You're not trapped here. You're the one who works here. A sudden chill runs through your body as the silence around you settles in. This place isn't just unfamiliar. It feels wrong, like every stone in the room has witnessed something it shouldn't have. You swing your legs off the bed slowly, your feet touching the cold ground, and for a moment, you just sit there, listening. No voices or movement, just the faint crackle of fire and the distant echo of dripping water. Then your eyes drift back to the table again, and this time, you notice how carefully everything is arranged. Whoever works here knows exactly what they're doing, and does it often. Your chest tightens as a disturbing thought settles in your mind. This isn't chaos. This is routine, and somehow, you're part of it. A man enters without knocking, carrying the air of someone who does this every day and expects you to do the same. "You're late," he says casually, like missing a morning meeting rather than stepping into a room full of terror. He hands you a scroll, and your hands tremble slightly as you unroll it. Names, crimes, instructions, confessions needed. The weight of responsibility presses down, heavier than the iron chains you notice along the walls. This is when it hits you. Torture wasn't always random cruelty. In medieval Europe, it was often highly regulated. There were rules about when it could be used, who could authorize it, and even how it should be performed. You're not just a tormentor. You're a professional in a grim bureaucracy. And today, your role has a twist. You're testing a new method. Medieval innovation, it seems, wasn't limited to art and science. Some people dedicated themselves to making suffering more efficient. And that's your job now. They bring him in, a man, trembling but trying desperately to appear brave. His eyes dart around the room, landing on every shadow, every glint of metal, until they finally settle on you. You recognize the look immediately, fear mixed with a stubborn thread of dignity. It's a look that humans have carried into countless courts, dungeons, and chambers of horror throughout history. And now it's yours to witness. You glance at the scroll again. Theft, heresy, a political rival's whim? It hardly matters. In many historical cases, torture wasn't about finding truth. It was about confirming what the authorities already believed. Your task is simple: ensure the reality fits the story. The device they want you to test is a variation of the rack, the infamous contraption that methodically stretches the human body. Slowly, carefully, it dislocates joints, tears muscles, and breaks the spirit. But all in controlled increments. Someone once engineered this, and now, so have you. You hesitate, gripping the device's levers. Not out of fear for yourself, but because the absurdity of the situation hits hard. One moment you were worrying about trivial things, what to eat, deadlines, exams, and the next, you're about to manipulate a machine designed to pull confessions out of another human being like a stubborn cork from a bottle. The man on the rack watches you, his hope barely concealed. That hope makes it worse, because hope means he still believes you might stop. And here's the grim historical truth. Many torturers weren't monsters. They were employees, paid to do a job no one else wanted, within systems that normalized cruelty. In places like Renaissance Italy or during the Spanish Inquisition, procedures were documented, even regulated. Dead people don't confess, after all. So here you are, part of a centuries-old machinery of suffering, wondering how you ended up on this side of history. You take a deep breath and begin, slowly, mechanically. The rack creaks under tension as you adjust it, each turn of the lever precise, deliberate. This new method isn't entirely new. It's a refinement. Longer intervals, slower increments, designed to increase psychological pressure while keeping the body from collapsing too quickly. Efficiency through suffering, a concept surprisingly familiar to medieval engineers. History is full of examples. City-states in Renaissance Italy experimented with variations of torture as if running scientific trials. In Spain, inquisitors documented procedures meticulously, setting limits to avoid death. After all, a dead man can't confess. You check the scroll. No confession yet. Of course not. You've just begun. But the weight of the responsibility settles on your shoulders, heavier than the chains, heavier than the fear in the man's eyes. This is not cruelty. It's procedure, and you are the instrument. Hours, or maybe minutes, time stretches strangely here, pass in tense silence. You realize it's not the screams that are hardest to bear, it's the quiet moments in between. That breathless pause when the room seems to hold its own weight, and even the guards shift uneasily, sensing the tension. Torture isn't just about inflicting pain. It's about breaking identity, negotiating with a person's very sense of self. Then, finally, he speaks. Not loudly or dramatically. Just enough. A name or a nod. Something that satisfies the legal requirement. You stop. Not because of mercy, but because the system demands it. And in that moment, the historical reality settles uncomfortably on you. Torture was often a methodical, bureaucratic process. Confessions were extracted to maintain order, not discover truth. And you, in your unexpected promotion to innovation, just played your part. It's over. The guards take him away, dragging him back into the shadows where his fate will continue without your involvement. You don't ask where. History has shown you that it rarely gets better from here. The man who first handed you the scroll returns, examining the device and making careful notes. Effective, he mutters. That's your performance review. Effective. You sink into a chair, staring at your hands as if they belong to someone else. The reality hits harder than any lever or hook ever could. Systems like this didn't collapse overnight. They evolved slowly, replaced by new ideas, law, evidence, rights, concepts that seem obvious now but took centuries to take hold. And people like you were part of that long, uncomfortable transition. Ordinary individuals, doing terrible things, yet somehow sleeping at night. History wasn't made just by kings and wars, it was made by people like you. Night falls, and the torches burn lower, casting long, uneasy shadows across the stone walls. You lie down, staring at the ceiling, hoping, against hope, that you'll wake up somewhere else, somewhere normal, somewhere far from this grim profession you never asked for. But one thought refuses to leave. If you had been born in this time, in this system, would you have done anything differently? Because history doesn't just remember kings, wars, or inventions. It remembers ordinary people, bureaucrats, laborers, torturers who followed rules, kept systems running, and rarely questioned their role. And now, lying in the flickering light, you realize something unsettling. Your place in history is as real as anyone else's, and the weight of routine cruelty can be heavier than any chain, louder than any scream, and more enduring than the walls themselves.